hear views, expert views from our esteemed speaker, Mr. Arif Siddiqui. Incidentally, Arif and me know each other for a very long, long time. In fact, I've looked up to him on many occasions when it comes to warehousing design and solutions, and he's always been super candid about what the industry needs, what quality of infrastructure, where we stand. I remember the last conversation. He even went to the extent of saying that when people say FM2, they're so confused. They don't really know what they're talking about, right? So I think over the next 45 minutes, we will all hear many questions and curiosities answered by Arif to the best of his possibility as a subject matter expert. And I would like to also give an introduction to Arif. Not that he needs a specific introduction, but the format of the fireside chat is that you go through the level of professionalism of introducing Arif. Otherwise, who does not know Arif in the industry? Yeah? We bump into conferences. We do a lot of work together. We're hoping to do a lot of work together. Not only within my organization that I represent, RSA Global, but also in the industry. So Arif has worked with prestigious names in the business, and a very big name at that being AFL. And incidentally, Arif and me had the same boss once upon a time, Mr. Rajiv Rajadhaksha. Yeah, and Arif started off his own consulting practice. He saw a gap, obviously, and that gap was not only as relevant and predominant then, about a decade and plus over, but still holds true now. And I believe that gap will remain for a very long time, though it continues to be solved and addressed by eminent people like Arif and his enterprise called Coin Consulting. The business is huge, the landscape is huge, right? In India, we are a developing country, and given the sheer size of our economy, that word developing to reach to developed, I think, will be a long journey. And as we all, as part of the fraternity, try and address it, Arif and his team have done a commendable job at that by really focusing and zeroing on a specific topic, which is around warehouse design and optimization. And we would like to call it warehouse design to provide velocity for now, uh, because that's the essential commodity that you really need. But before I go on to ask Arif a few questions, I would like to keep to request Arif to say a few words, and then we can start the Q&A.
Good evening, everybody, and APR. Thank you very much. A few of your statements actually, put me into that nostalgia for a very short while. When you said that we had the same boss, and you were absolutely right. This journey has been a 30-year journey, which has taken almost now. It's in its 31st year. When we started something which was called as ACE door-to-door cargo. The word logistics did not exist at that time. Then we started talking about logistics. And then we said third-party logistics, which is 3PL, and then 3PL moved into supply chain, and people started like the word supply chain and picked that word up. And from there, and then finally it became contract logistics. So we've all seen it all there. Warehouses were godowns, and godowns were never available because they were only storing grains, and there were these dilapidated units called as sick industrial units, which became warehouses for a very long time. Up until the fact that the farmers realized that there was this alternate investment that they could do, and then some went through the joint development scheme, and some went through their family-owned investments and created warehouses. But the fact was that, and is today, even now, is that over 85% of the warehouses that exist in India are far in time. So we started, this was one gap as a third-party service provider, as I was introduced by APR, that yes, I worked in AFL Logistics, and finally in 2005, I left AFL Logistics as the head of the business, or now called a CEO. And one of the key things that I realized was that infrastructure, processes, and systems would be the key to contract logistics and third-party logistics business in India. And that is where I found a huge gap that existed in terms of nobody knew what infrastructure was, nobody knew what specifications were required. Architects just knew that it's four walls, a shed. That's what they used to call it, a shed. I mean, you just add to it the word cow, and it became cowshed. So it was all about, this is how this industry was termed as. And as a result of which I realized that there was a big gap. And I, being in the pioneering organization like AFL, we were the leaders in that business. There was a lot of discussions that people were having, which are outside from the respective industries, from contract logistics industries, from principal industries, etc., that said, can you tell us how this third-party logistics business is really flourishing and setting up? And that gave me a lot of ideas in saying that maybe there was a big opportunity for me to set up a consulting firm. And in 2005, I then gave birth to Coin Consulting. And it's been 17 years that we have been alive, and we've been doing some very interesting work all around the world. Our fundamental cause of existence, continues to remain, as APR said, at the center of the warehouse. We design logistics parks. We design intra-warehouse layouts, which is the internal layouts of warehouses. And when we say we design, we actually come from the core understanding of operations process, and therefore we are more like functional designers. We have over a period of time picked up a lot of architectural skills, structural skills, and engineering skills over the past 17 years. And therefore, sometimes we sound like engineers. And when I say engineers, I'm not that we are not one, but I'm saying we start sounding like architects and all that. But we are basically supply chain or warehouse process engineers. And that's what we do for a living. You will probably, as we talk around and answer questions that APR may shoot on me rather. So while I'm answering that, you will pick up probably, you'll also get to know me better as to what our skill sets and capabilities are. Yes, over to you.
Thank you, Arif. Thanks a lot for that share. I think I'll, in the interest of time, given the fact that we have only 40 or 37 minutes left now, to be precise, I think I'll straight shoot out questions. Yeah, a lot of people, including me, are awaiting to hear these answers from you.
Yeah.
And first one, I would say, Arif, is what are the elements of warehouse design that accelerate velocity? I mean, I ask with the inference. You talk about the park and the building, right?
Yeah.
So could you shed some light on this?
Yeah, very interesting. I think, see the word velocity, when I actually, the other day when we were having a chat over this, the word velocity got coined when many people used to say that I want a warehouse where I can do things with a lot of speed, that can add a lot of speed to my activity. We want throughputs to churn out, from a warehouse. We have a huge amount of transactions to handle, and therefore we want things to happen fast, So most of the warehouse managers or supply chain engineers, or for that matter, supply chain managers, have always expressed their concern of fast. And typically, month-end pressures, we want speed, we want to churn throughputs, etc. And that's when I started thinking of this very long time back, and then said that, most of things that we do which are fast and speed, can only be done with respect to performance only if they are velocity. And what the difference between velocity and speed is that speed that has a direction is velocity. And speed by itself, which has no direction, but it is very fast, is what you call as high speed, is the rate of change. That's what. So when we talk about acceleration and velocity, we are talking of the rate of change with a direction, you know. So that's very important that, you know, there needs to be a direction to the speed that we give. And today's buildings, or other buildings of today, that need to be able to create velocity uh, for the supply chain operations or the warehousing operations, you know, to start listing some of them down, you know, in my opinion, has always been, the first one has been the the function of aspect ratio. When I talk about aspect ratio, we talk about length to breadth of the warehouse. Today, if you see, you know, we have a lot of people who started using these words. First of all, they started calling the warehouse a box, you know, which I'm not very happy to hear, but I'm saying, okay, fine. That's what most of the international property consulting companies started terming the warehouse as a box. Okay. Now, I don't know, is a toy box, is a box that you can kick, or what is the reference of that, you know? And then they started saying big boxes, large box, you know. And when you start calling these items as boxes, then there is no relationship, you know, to the functionality of what this infrastructure category is all about. And therefore, we have started seeing that large buildings have started coming up, 4 lakh, 5 lakh, 6 lakh square feet, which are as deep as maybe 150 feet, 150 meters by 300 meters, you know, that makes it 4 lakh 50,000 square feet. But we don't realize that the aspect ratio has a limitation, you know. Uh, and if your aspect ratio is not right, you will not be able to gain velocity in the operations, meaning that you will have a man running 150 meters deep inside, and then he gets tired by the time he picks one phone, or he picks maybe even a pallet load of material. So therefore, aspect ratio needs to be very well understood. Otherwise, it can actually decelerate, not accelerate. It can actually decelerate your operation. So therefore, in my opinion, very important element is aspect ratio. The second important element is the plinth. We all have been talking about, you know, 4 feet plinth, 1.2 meter plinth, but we hardly realize, you know, actually that a lot of vehicles that come for local deliveries, and if your hierarchy is that you're a regional warehouse or a city warehouse, then you will receive material from regional or central warehouses, which will mean that it will come in big vehicles, and you will end up dispatching vehicles which are smaller vehicles into in-city or into small spokes, you know, or regional centers. So therefore, you would have different types of plinths. So plinths add to velocity. And that's very important for us to understand. How do I manage a plinth which can take care, you know, of a Tata 407, an ACE vehicle, at the same time also can take care of a 40 feet container, and so on and so forth. Air circulation, very important. Human beings work in warehouses. There were days when in 1 lakh square feet, there were hardly 40, 50 people who used to work, because these were basically storage centers, you know. But now in 100,000 square feet, you know, you have as many as 100 to 200 people working. And if it's an e-commerce warehouse in a 300, 200,000 square feet, you have more than 600 to 700 people working. So imagine these 700 or 600 people working need oxygen, you know, and oxygen needs to be fresh to them. Can't have stale oxygen, otherwise, you know, the productivity gets affected. You don't have that much of energy left in. So air circulation, we don't understand. Most of us do not think of air circulation. We talk about 3-year changes, 5-year changes, 6-year changes. The point is that yes, you get 6-year changes as confirmed by the builder, and you sign off on that. But do you ever check, and do you see? We have not. We don't consider the fact that air needs to come in and it needs to push the inside air out, and therefore you need louvers, you know, which are low heighted. They are not too high above the floor level, to suck the fresh air in and push the contaminated air out from the ridges, you know, for example. So the aspect of understanding the elements of the buildings and the logistics park that actually add value or add velocity to my operations is actually very, very shallow, and therefore becomes very important for supply chain managers and engineers to be able to appreciate that which are those elements, column grids and positions. You know, most of us the builders just build column grids and just give it to you because you say, see, oh, okay, fine, this is a large column. It seems to be having a jack beam and therefore long spans. But when you start putting your racking system in between, you have to compromise on many pallet positions because the column fouls in the aisle space or it falls within the racks and therefore takes away a lot of places, etc., etc. So the point is that these are functional infrastructure. They're not boxes. These are functional buildings, and these functional buildings are actually delivering operational efficiency. That's all that you can expect from these buildings. They are supposed to, by inherently, be designed to deliver operational efficiency. It's like I can put a Ferrari engine, in an ambassador car, an old model, not aerodynamic car, and can you still expect it to win the race? No. So the car has to be functionally designed to make sure that it is aerodynamic, it's able to provide you that 320 kilometers an hour of speed, and so on and so forth. It facilitates that requirement. So that way, elements, to quickly sum up, this question, elements like roof and wall insulation, dock, types of docks, whether do I need angular docks, I need perpendicular docks, or then you have these old style docks where you've got one small platform jutting out, what types of dock arrangements do we need? Floor, FM2, I mean, what the hell does FM2 mean? FM2 means nothing. The full form of FM2 is free movement and the number 2. Obviously, all floors are free movement. How does it define specs? Free movement doesn't define anything. I can give you an FM2 floor. It can be really wonky, and I'll say it's free movement. You can freely move on it. So definitions are very important, and we tend to carry, very old nomenclatures like you would call a detergent as surf, and say, get me some surf, and I can get you, any detergent, and you accept it. So these common, generic, old, archaic, I would say templates and names, we should now throw them off and start using the right templates, because then the providers become a little more responsible when you actually put the right name. These are coordinated accesses. We are always thinking about material coming in. We don't think about how people come in, because people come through the same rolling shutters where materials come in from. That's been the whole practice. So coordinated access, utilities and services, where should we have, in a 4 lakh square feet warehouse, you can't afford to have a toilet in one corner. In a 5 lakh square feet warehouse, you cannot afford to have 2 toilets in 2 corners. So it has to be well thought out, because you've got human beings and you are measuring their productivity. They are going to visit, these utilities 3 times and sometimes 4 times a day, and imagine if they've got to walk 200 meters every time that they want to use, these human facilities. He would end up with a lot of fatigue, and he'll waste your time, and so on and so forth. Lighting, high bay light is a very common word. Have we ever spoken about lux level? Have we ever spoken about luminous intensity? Have we ever said, I want this? Have we measured it? Have we read fine prints? SAP ends up printing a lot of fine print pick lists, and these WMSs printouts are sometimes very, 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 very small. I mean, I don't know what font 4 or font 5 they use, but the fact is that it's very, very tedious to read these things, and especially to add to the lighting. So velocity, you need to think, and if you as human beings just use commonsensical knowledge to think what adds or accelerates velocity, you will get a larger list than what I've just even assembled and put together, because it's nothing commonsensical, and therefore we should always evaluate our designs and the parks and the buildings that we hire, keeping velocity in mind. I have not even covered the external aspects like traffic planning and movement design, which is another aspect. But for the moment, I think I'll get to the next question. I'll finish with this here. I hope I've been able to velocity.
No, that's very insightful, Arif. I think there was a piece of interview that I watched. I watched MS Dhoni give an interview, and while he was the captain, but during his captaincy, and he said, "Hey," he was telling this to the interviewer, to the host, that I always believed common sense was common. And not until I became the captain of the country's cricket team, and I realized that what you believe that others are as intelligent as you are because those were basic thoughts. Yeah, but you should accept that those are not common
Yeah,
anymore,
they're
and
not.
hence consulting companies and experts like yourselves are required to give these so-called common sense inputs to companies that can afford these services, can take these services, and in the longer run benefit from the industry benefits, the company benefits, the user benefits, everybody benefits, right?
Right.
So just a lighter note on that it isn't any
Uh,
common anymore.
yeah,
I had one question, but I will put it for last. I'll keep it for last rather. But with reference to what you mentioned in your earlier comment and your views, that when we really look at being able to make these fundamental creations within the warehouse, right? They actually come in at a time when the site is either greenfield, if not brownfield, right?
yeah,
And if you really look at choices out there in the market, not everybody wants a 4 lakh 5 lakh square feet warehouse. Some
yes,
people want only a small portion of it, and that generally comes with a ready-made infrastructure. You're picking and choosing from what are the options shared through real estate consultants and broking
yes,
companies. And
yes,
there's hardly any change that you can bring about. You cannot reduce the column width. You cannot put it at the right place. Docks are docks. They're pre-constructed. You're probably taking a small portion of that entire warehouse. So this question I would keep it for last. Just maybe you could make
yes,
a mental note of that. And
yeah,
I will ask you another question uh, in the flow of the previous question. Uh, how would a and it's again infrastructure related. How does a warehouse manager, site manager, operations head, or whoever is the responsible person, uh, how does he um, tick all the boxes and basically conclude that whatever is his objective or the company's objective that will be met with this particular warehouse, this particular sorry to say this box. I don't like the word either. So there's this distribution center, this aggregation center.
correct.
How does one tick all the necessary boxes? I mean, what's the criteria?
Yeah, very good. So actually, we are a very the answer to this question will probably also answer the question that you have kept for the end, to some extent. So like, it's not like math that it is either right or it's wrong. It's more like other subjects, like you have physics or chemistry, where the maximum mark allotted to a particular question can be 5, and you can still get a tick and give 4. The teacher would give you 4 or 3. You get my point.
Yeah.
So you still got a tick, but you got a tick which was not a very hard tick, and a long tick. It was a tick, and instead of 5 marks, which are the full marks there, you got 3.5 or 4. So we are at a stage in India where we can't tick and get full marks for every aspect that we want to evaluate, or the criteria of selecting a warehouse which is fit for purpose cannot meet all the ticks, because you're absolutely right. Infrastructure can only be picked to the extent that it's available. How do you think that these Japanese auditors, the German auditors, etc., have been still auditing and passing their fellow companies in India when 10 years or 15 or 20 years back, when you never had these new age warehouses, and we were operating from shanties, which were probably half of them during the rains were covered underwater, and no proper roads, and whatever you have. I mean, all of us have experienced those days 30 years back or 25 years back. But we were still getting a tick from the auditors, and the auditors did not ask for winding up the company from India and moving out, because they said this is what is available. Within that, people were trying to select the best of the devil. So I think we would continue to remain within the best of the devil approach. And I'm not talking, I agree with you, not everybody can afford warehouses from the new age developers or pay that type of price maybe, and there is going to be there is going to be a good fair amount of supply that would still continue about for the I would say substandard or B quality type of warehouses, and you will have to continue to tick some of those boxes despite the fact that you may not be very happy. So that's one. Very important first is I'm not very sure that customers or everybody, most of the people would probably, or managers would, warehouse managers would exactly know what they're looking for. Okay. They are more driven by what a broker would come and tell them that this is what is available. You know, most of these terminologies that people have learned of, is side height and center height and FM2 floor and plinth height of 4 feet. And, these terminologies that people have learned, is most of them have been educated to us by the brokers. Because where do we interact with the infrastructure? Through which mode do we interact? The mode is the broker. And as the broker keeps getting educated, he keeps passing on these so-called jargons to us, A, to impress, and B, to say that we've evolved, and C, to say that this is what you need. Okay. How many times have we challenged these needs on the basis of what our understanding of the demand is? How many times have we understood what our customer needs as a service from my warehouse? How many of us have understood what are the requirements of my products which I'm going to store in this facility, and what will they be? How many of us are looking at the long-term transformation of the business and scalability of the business and then saying, I need this place? I think there needs to be, and I'm seeing there are exceptions, and I'm not pleased talking about the top 1,000 companies probably in India. I'm talking about, here we're talking about the masses. Okay. How many times does the warehouse manager even get the chance to go and present a case, upwards to his vertical and say that, this is what I don't like about this warehouse where I am, and I want to insist that I'm going to shift because I need this, and this, because he unfortunately always believes that he's a cost center and can't come back. So I think a lot of change needs to, first of all, happen in the overall socio-cultural, I would say environment that he operates. And when I say socio-cultural, I'm not talking about the social in his personal life. I'm talking about warehouse managers spend more than 15 to 16 hours a day, or maybe more than 12 hours a day in the warehouse, and therefore end up spending most of their awake time in that business. The rest of it they spend at home, where they're sleeping for almost 75% of the time that they're there. So I would say this is where their social life is. This is where their corporate life is. So they should be given that chance to come up and speak, and it should be heard very, very, very clearly. And that is, I think this transformation is taking place, as a result of which you are seeing new age development happening. You are seeing supply chain managers listening to the warehouse managers and taking those steps to say, I think you should not compromise. And the next time that you're going to shift to a warehouse, ask for this, and this. Most of the developers make changes. So I talk to so many developers who are my clients, and I'm not talking of the A and B and C category developers. I'm really talking of the average developers. They come and say that, Mr. Siddiqui, I'm willing to build a warehouse. As far as the amount of investment I make, I'm able to get the return on that investment. Tenants don't want to pay me a rent. Now, this is a complete dichotomy. I'm saying if you want somebody to give you a best-in-class facility, then for sure is going to make investment in it, and it's going to be huge capex investment. We should encourage these developers to invest, and I'm talking of the small developers. I'm not talking of the large ones. The large ones, in any case, there are various reasons that they will invest in good quality. I mean, the private equity firms itself will make sure that they don't deviate. They themselves come from that particular category of thought process that they will not deviate. But this gentleman who comes from owners of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 warehouses across the country, not the millions of square feet, he needs to be given that confidence that that if you give me this, I will give you a payback on it, or I will give you a 1 rupee more rent on it. We continue to haggle on the rent and expect best good quality of investment. I think that doesn't happen. So believe me, if you're looking at good efficiency, then efficiency is going to come and effectiveness will come purely by good investment that the landlords will have to make. And if he demands that extra penny, then I think it should be given to him. So how do my warehouse folks get to know about the warehouse for fit for purpose? Is first of all setting up your requirement, looking at the SKU proliferation that's taking place across the time. The other one is looking at your customer demand and how the demands are changing. There are companies now, who have got into the omni-channel. They never thought that they're going to process e-commerce orders alongside their B2B orders in the same warehouse, under the same roof. This is a change that has happened. Now, the behavior of an e-commerce warehouse versus the B2B warehouse is completely different. It's chalk and cheese. The transaction volumes in a e-commerce facility, or B2C, is different from B2B. The size of the transactions are different. The size of the boxes are different, etc. So whole paradigm difference between the two. But they have to operate from the same facility. Who knew that? Which means that the infrastructure needs to behave and be able to facilitate, the transactions in that manner. So I think requirement statement is very important, and therefore you can run with your hunt once you've got your requirement with a little bit of a long time scalability vision.
I think this would also mean, Arif, that we sort of help these small developers with a direction through maybe even also through WAI, which both you and me are a part of, that will allow them to sort of have an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, wherein their investments are distributed, wherein they also make the right returns, so they don't undercut on the quality of infra, and they don't come up with different quality of infrastructures within the grading system that we have, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's a point to be noted. While we can have an expectation, we will also have to work towards it as a industry,
APR,
as fraternity people.
APR, you've actually hit a very, very important chord at this time, and you're absolutely right. As the Vice President of the Warehousing Association of India, one of the things that I'm also working on is basically looking at the typical Indian developer. There is a lot of change that is happening there because there's a new generation that has already started joining their parent business, because business of property generally is very, very family and heritage. So from that point of view, these new boys who are joining their parents' development companies are actually looking at it from a very different mindset. They are not willing to compromise. And therefore, what will happen that you will have a very large set of infrastructure, which will suddenly, move up the scale, and they will stand there like the gully boys. They will stand there with their chest out and say that, okay, my infrastructure is also complies to 19 out of your 25 points, and therefore I can demand an 18 rupee rent. And therefore you will start seeing that they would start giving you all those elements that would have started improving your efficiency and the velocity, as I was talking about. So that's a good change that's happening.
Absolutely, Arif. With this, I will ask you another question, and I'm sorry, I'm just shooting questions and you're non-stop speaking. If you want to take a water break, please feel free to do that.
I have a cutting chai here. You can see.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. So
the good old days, the good old cutting chai cup glass.
This keeps me very close to the warehouse, by the way. So
True that. Yeah. Is it raining? Is it raining outside the window? Yeah, because
no,
then it makes.
It's not raining. Actually, it's not raining.
Okay.
Out of coincidence. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Okay. So over to the next question, and this is more from a if it's actually from an ROC perspective. Yeah, one is the capital expenditure that you incur, And then is the return that you get on it. And there are typically two kinds of returns that we all talk about. One is, and capital is not only money, right? It is also about your output that you get out of the warehouse in terms of performance. So if we really talk about this topic, what according to you should be the key points while we focus on designing our warehouse for growth and flexibility, because that is going to be directly proportional to what results that you want. And therefore, what have you seen over the last years of witnessing this gradual shift? That what are the top age techniques that are used by operating managers for the overall warehouse performance, to assess?
Great, excellent question. APR, I think, very, very an area where change has happened, and for the good, I would say. There are two aspects that actually are fundamental to the designing of a distribution center or a fulfillment center or dark store, whichever. Two very important aspects. How much do I need to store and how much do I need to churn? So churn and store are two very, very critical aspects. We all understand the supply chain managers that as demand increases or sales increase, inventory should not increase in the same proportion, right? I think that's something which all of us try to do, that we do not want to increase. So if my sales increases by 2x, it does not mean that my inventory goes up by 2x. The supply chain head would always like to see that the inventory doesn't grow in the same proportion as sales grows, so that the only way you can ensure that is by churning more. So two fundamental, I would say, businesses of a warehouse is store and churn. The earlier, most of us knew what we want to store. And that would lead to looking at the warehouse purely as a storage center, because everybody would say, I want 25,000 pallet positions, and that would be the first. I want 55,000 square feet, and everything used to be around the storage side of the business. Now, the key difference that is now taking place is that people are talking of churn, and which means throughput. Throughput brings out a completely different paradigm, in the design of a warehouse. Throughput is not only about capacity, it's about velocity. It is both about capacity and velocity. Okay. And velocity needs space. Velocity needs, it needs not square meters, it requires meters. It performs best in linearity, which means that if you see today, you just look at your own warehouses. Most of us have spent more than 2 decades in this business, I'm sure, who are attending this call, who are on this VC. And some of us have crossed the 3.5 decade mark, like myself. So the point is that your warehouses have changed from 80% storage and 20%, the functional intermediary process area, to almost 50% staging and processing area and 50% or 40% storage. Why has that happened? It's happened because the warehouses have transformed from pure godowns and storage centers to processing centers. There is quality control centers that is happening. There is outbound quality control. There is inbound quality control. There is checking, packing, labeling. So many on-the-go value-added services, which earlier were separate value-added services. Now, stickering is no more a value-added service. I remember 20 years back, we used to charge 10 paisa per sticker or 20 paisa per sticker as a value-added service. Today, it's on the go. While you're receiving material in or while you're dispatching material out, you're putting barcodes on. So the point is that a lot of value-added services, a lot of peripheral services and activities have now become core to the entire business, and that has changed the overall design paradigm. Okay, design is being done from inside out and not from outside in anymore. I completely agree that we have all got constraints in terms of what infrastructure and building is available. How much can I change my column grid? How much can, unless I'm in a greenfield project? Yes, I agree with you. This is the form. This is the what you'll have to finally take what's available and probably sieve out the best of what is available. After having done that, everything is in your hand. After having done that, how do I intelligently plan my warehouse despite these constraints? And that is, and how do I make sure that I do not end up spending too much of capex just on the influence of what I am told is good, not by the influence of automation companies who come and say that you come and put this, or storage companies or material handling companies who. No, I think every penny needs to be justified, and every investment needs to be aligned to a particular process. It needs to be aligned to a particular throughput, and it has to be justified to a particular storage volume that we're looking at. So throughput and storage are two very, very core epicenters of the design mind. The next one are the processes, when you're talking about that. And in the processes, if you are looking at handling process, standardization and unit quantities and unitization of the SKU becomes a very important aspect. And that is what I'm trying to say, that if you are a manufacturer and you have got your own warehouse, you have better control over these unitization and standardization, because you can go back to manufacturing and packaging and procurement and say, this is too big. Can we reduce this by another 2 inches? Can we reduce the height and increase the lead breadth by 2 inches? And it will therefore fit on my pallet. Today I'm able to get 16 on a pallet. The little bit of change here and there will make it 24 on a pallet. These are the types of optimizations that we need to start looking at, and these are important aspects of growth and flexibility. Growth meaning you will evolve both in terms of change in design as well as in increase in numbers, and flexibility is where you will have a lot of proliferation taking place, where you will have today handling a round SKU, tomorrow it will become a rectangular SKU, so that's the flexibility. Then we need to look at, how do I use my heights? People are talking of selective pallet racking. How many of us are actually evaluating, different other methods? And these methods are in relationship to understanding the SKU, understanding the volume per SKU that we are storing, fine, and therefore trying to look at, buying, installing a mix of storage. I have very, very seldom seen in warehouses, not many warehouses, again, exceptions are there, but I have not seen warehouses where there are two types of storage systems. I still see people are going for selective pallet racking, where they are doing, if not piece picking, they're picking 4 boxes, bring the pallet, go up, take the forklift up, bring the pallet down, pick 2 boxes, take the pallet up, and go and position the pallet back again. This is not the way. This is not how you actually, design your warehouses and then expect them to cater to productivity and growth and so on and so forth. So a little more time needs to be spent on the overall movement. You need to understand your throughputs. You need to understand your processes. You need to look at these and then evaluate it for different categories of SKUs. So it's not that, one jacket fits all. No, you need to customize to some extent, fine. And then you would see that the ROI on your return, by virtue of not only the number of transactions that you're able to do, but by virtue of the productivity and the comfort that people will have in operating itself, is going to bring back a lot of ROI. We still do not know how to best use our spaces. And when I give a challenge to most of the boys in the warehouse to say that, okay, who is going to best use his space? Come back to me, without giving them. The person who actually tries to fit in the maximum number of create cube utilization inside feels that he's the guy. But I got 110 pallets and this guy got 92 pallets. I am better than him. The aspect is not that. When we talk about best use of space, we are talking about best use of space, both in terms of handling, storage, put away, retrieval, everything smoothly synchronized. So definitions are important for us to start putting in place. And I think this responsibility lies of the supply chain heads to start spending time with their warehouse managers and talk about these very, very fundamental differentiating factors, that are going to change the overall, look of and the way our warehouses behave. Of course, other aspects like design for productivity, establish a very efficient flow of processes. We don't look at flows. I'm seeing that I'm not very sure that many warehouses still believe, that human cost is high. I can see the mundane movement or vanilla movement from here to there continues to happen, by people pushing trolleys or rather carrying it on their shoulders. I don't see why simple things like conveyors, AGVs, etc., can be used. And maybe it's a thought process that these things are expensive. But if you really evaluate them, you will see that you will take that one small step extra to say that, okay, I think it's worth the expense. But we're not evaluating. We are not evaluating flows for better efficiency and productivity. We are not evaluating our structures. Are these structures lean? Are these structures stable? We're not looking at congestion, within these flows, and therefore the future proofing of most of our warehouse, are taken as last on the agenda rather than, I would say, somewhere important from a strategic perspective, important aspects to look at. Yes, APR.
Thanks, Arif. That was quite insightful. It baffles me how the pandemic has really upset a lot of what we've envisaged and planned. Uh, because if you really look at it, there were a few controllable and few uncontrollable factors.
Yes.
Always pretty standard, but they were uncontrollable. Yeah, and we knew that, okay, this is the market demand. It's going up and down. There are peaks and troughs. There's a sudden NPD, new product development, that you're bringing to the market. There's a reach to market, go to market strategy, and that again puts a lot of stress and pressure on the supply chain through and through. So we would be prepared for it, but we would be challenged for it in terms of flexibility and growth. But when the pandemic hit us all, and a lot of stocks were, we were basically in a stock out situation, and in some cases we were in a more stocking situation, and therefore the effect on throughput was off the roof. The planning really went haywire.
Yeah.
And if you combine that with the additional impact of global volatility, yeah,
Yes.
in terms of how the raw material prices went up, and material availability was scarce, shipping prices went off the roof. So either the big boys were literally, sorry to use the word, but hoarding stuff and stocking their warehouses, again putting a lot of pressure on the overall infrastructure, overall supply chain. Uh, in I think I wouldn't say that I would need an answer from you on this, but definitely a viewpoint, because none of us were prepared for this, and we all
Yes.
obviously had a learning. Yeah. So what
Yes.
was your learning in this case?
Oh, great. I learned a lot, to be very honest. Some of the things that I didn't think that were important, actually, I realized were very important. So myself was quite negligent on a lot of things with regards to design and a lot of things with regards to supply chain principles and rules, to be honest. So the one thing that I realized, actually there were two things that come very clearly to my mind is dealing with congestion. There were orders coming, there were lockdowns happening, roads were getting blocked or closed. The idea was, how do I handle so many orders in a small time window? The time windows became small, to service the daily needs of people. All this happening, and emergency supplies, and I'm talking on a pharma warehouse and vaccine warehouse where emergency supplies or medicines were so critical, the Dolo 650 was the hero of the pandemic, and in a Dolo warehouse, you can imagine what was happening in a Dolo warehouse.
Unimaginable.
Yeah, in a Dolo warehouse. Apart from the fact that, there was one side there was money printing happening, but the other side you had to reach the Dolo somewhere, right? And everywhere, nook and corner. So that scenario that suddenly from X to 10x is the demand of one product, one single SKU in a warehouse which is holding more than 1,000 SKUs. Just one single, and the rest of them are not selling. They're just stopped. They're just holding there. Okay, and you need to create space. So scalability was one of the biggest aspect that I realized that any such eventuality, one savior to the warehouse is the ability to scale up. And space scalability is what I'm referring to. Even if companies had 5 to 10% of scalability in space available to them, or capacity for that matter, available to them during the pandemic, and I'm not referring to any one company, I'm saying all companies who were active. I'm saying the B2C, the food and beverage companies, the pharmaceutical companies, etc., the items that were actually which were of concern, at that point of time. If they had planned for a little bit as 8 to 10% of scalability, they would have had, I would say, 70% less problems that they still would have had some problem, but I'm saying 70% less than that what they had. Scalability in terms of adding number of docks, scalability in terms of adding square feet of space, scalability in cubic feet of space. That was one. The non-availability of scalability led to congestion. Are you getting the point I'm trying to make? Because they could not scale up and they had to operate more and more within the small given space, it was a complete act of congestion. Many people and many scholars have come back and written now, and I've been reading some of these. If processes were in place and smoothened, then we would not have. I agree, but processes finally have to operate in a given space. You can't go to accommodate 200,000 people in a space of where actually 100,000 people are supposed to be accommodated, and then say, no, I have great processes to see that these 200,000 people also churn out or just because I have good process. So no, there is going to be, you need to put your process in place, you need to put systems in place, but what space requires is what space requires. Space is a physical form, processes are virtual forms, but space can be only replaced by space, and scalability can only be replaced by the plan that this is what will happen, and therefore I need that space, reserved, tucked in somewhere. So these are two things which I observed, and I blamed myself in some cases for not having provided for scalability, or rather not having insisted too much. We did provide in some cases, and it was shot down because it's a cost. But I should have probably put my foot down with my experience and said, no, this was what will take care of situations like we never knew this was going to come anyway. So, but now what we are doing, we are insisting on scalability, we are insisting on smoothing of processes and decongestion to take care of decongestion. So these are the things that I would say.
That's again, beautiful in terms of the insight. Arif, thank you so much for that view. And before I open up the forum for Q&As from the audience, they've mentioned a few of their questions in the chat box. We may not be able to take all, but definitely one or two. But I have one last question for the fireside chat for you, and this again is probably hinging on your experience in terms of identifying blind spots, in a warehouse, in a distribution center. So what sort of health checks should be performed to identify these blind spots? And we all know that there are, unfortunately today, many such blind spots that keep harrowing us. So your views, please, on this.
Yeah, since we are short on time, I will not take too much time in answering this, but let me just give you a few, and this is very interesting. Very few companies talk about blind spots because we are so used to driving in such a format, that blind spots are like given, they're just like part of life, and we don't even keep them in mind till it hits us. And in the warehouses, in warehouses, the best of warehouses would end up with some blind spots. Um, in India, whatever my research tells me, in most of the cases that we have surveyed or we have seen, or when we have changed design, we have found some of these as very common blind spots. Uh, I am using a warehouse management system. The question is, does it have all the functionality? Is it the latest warehouse management system? Does it take care of B2C? Uh, can you handle a little bit of transport management in it? And therefore, you suddenly realize this doesn't exist. Most of the companies today have taken a lot of time to embark on simple B2C just because they didn't have a warehouse management system or a logistics management process which could move them quickly onto the e-commerce or B2C business. And I'm not talking about complete e-commerce business. I'm talking of the omnichannel. Second is refreshment of your processes, procedures, methods, systems. We leave it once the SOP is written, it's written and left and forgotten. Fine. Once in 4-5 years, suddenly we find, oh, we need to do a project and let's now look at our. I think these are processes, procedures, systems that need to be refreshed, need to be refined, need to be relooked at a more frequent basis in order to keep us agile, in order to keep this. That's the second thing that I want to look at. Performance measures. We set up performance measures. I know many companies have already matured and evolved themselves and have put different KPIs and SLAs and performance measures in place. But we do not realize that some of these performance measures, the performance measure is like a dashboard. Imagine the dashboard of 20 years back of a car and the dashboard today of even the averagely priced car. There's a paradigm shift in that dashboard. They're showing you so many other things on the dashboard which you did not see earlier. Okay, the basics remain there, but they're showing you much more, and it's making you more aware, and more insightful dashboards are coming in. So are we creating dashboards that are giving us deeper insights of the warehouse operations, the processes, and the performances? Can we start constantly dwelling in these dashboards? Can we keep deep diving into our data and saying that I also want to see it from, I want to slice and dice it and see it from this dimension and that dimension? Or are we stuck on the same old things that have been going on for a long time? The last thing that I personally feel is a very big blind spot is the benchmarking. Benchmarking is seldom done by organizations, and I will not blame all of them completely. There are very few references on benchmarks. There are very few publications on industry benchmarks. Fine, or rather, I would say credible information on benchmarks. There are for many, but for many they are not available. But my point is, if there are no external references available, you can have internal references that are being improvised upon. Every day you will be surprised maybe what your performance is higher than what is the standard benchmark available. So benchmarking of performances of your own performance, internalization of these benchmarks become a very, very important aspects. So I think these are just a few that come to my mind, and I'm a little bit pressure on time, so maybe I would have said a few more, but this is what comes at the top of my mind with respect to health checks that probably should be done on a very regular basis.
Thanks a lot, Arif, for answering this question as well. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat box which you have already answered through the questions that I asked and through the inputs that you shared. So I'll just pick one, which I think everyone would love to hear, because the whole world is talking about net zero. Sustainability. I think that's a lovely point, and I think not only lovely, but it is a essential point for sustainability, not only for a warehouse or a town city, but for the planet Earth. right? So if we talk about our role as warehousing people, what is really what is the direction that India and Indian warehousing has taken in terms of carbon neutrality, green warehouses in India? If you could just
Yeah.
quickly share some
Yeah.
insights.
Yeah, quickly. Great. Very good question. And I think I had that in my mind, but somehow it just missed off, yeah. So as far as warehousing is concerned, let us see what are the things that warehouses can add to, or where do we damage environment. First, it's a very important for us to understand what do we need to control. Damage control. We know solar is green. We know we need to plant trees. I think this is something which is now already embedded in general knowledge also. The point is, what are we generating that is impacting the Mother Earth? That's very important. So first of all, I think a warehouse is a place where a lot of energy is consumed, especially when we talk about lighting energy, charging energy, cooling energy, energy for cooling, energy for charging, MHEs, energy for illumination, which is lighting, and so on and so forth. Straight away, all of us have the answer, and I can see there's a huge transformation from filament lights to LED lights. I think that is one thing that has happened and is there to stay. I think we've already crossed that hump, and we're all there, fine, as far as energy is concerned. Second is insulation. Okay, there's a lot of because sustainability is not only about the Mother Earth, but it's also the people on the Mother Earth. So from tin sheds to insulated sheds, from only roof insulation to wall insulation. Both of them, we are slowly, I think it's sold now, that infrastructure. People are refusing to work in pure shed warehouses. You won't get good talent there. You want insulated warehouse. So thanks to all that we've done in the past 20-25 years, I remember I brought in the polymer insulation, in India, and made that a very, very important standard. And now we can see that the bubble insulation has become there. So in bubble insulation, third and these are all IGBC. These are all IGBC, the Indian Green Building Council points that we are talking about. Okay, very important. The very important part is that we generate a lot of roof water. Our roofs, large roofs of 1 million square feet of roof, collects a lot of rainwater, and that rainwater needs to be channelized into the earth. It needs to be given back into the earth rather than drained in streams and nalas. That is something which I would say that even if your landlords have not done it, please take that up as your sole exercise as part of your CSR or ESG, fine, and say, I commit that whatever warehouses I have, and as many warehouses I have around the country, whatever water is generated by what I'm talking of rainwater, I will harvest that rainwater, even if my developer doesn't have a rainwater harvesting well. It does not cost much, I'm telling you. We can, as occupiers, as tenants of these logistics parks, can actually do that for our own building and put back the water into Mother Earth. And that is something which I would, in a shortage of time, say is an initiative that we should take on our own as occupiers, because it doesn't cost too much to do that. That's one thing I would like everybody to pledge, because I'm sure listening and people out here who are here would be sitting on a couple of million square feet or probably more of warehouses, even as we speak today, And if we are able to even convert those and collect that water and put that back into the earth, regardless of the fact that we are the owners of those warehouses, I think we would have done returned a big pound of flesh back to the mother there, So that is one aspect of sustainability I feel is very, very important and can be done by all rather than depending on developers to do it on their own.
Very well put, Arif. Thank you very much. I think we have already surpassed our time of 5 p.m. You have your other schedules, and so do I. In the interest of everybody else's schedule as well, I think we will call it a day on this discussion. It was
Yes.
lovely talking to you. It was amazing having you on board, and please accept our apologies for any inconveniences that we
No.
might have intentionally or unintentionally caused to you. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much. Nishtush, anything that you want to add here?
Yes, just an excellent conversation, Mr. Arif and APR,
Thank you.
brilliantly given the idea of warehousing, and really in a layman's language, I would say, Mr. Arif, not many people knew a lot of these things. So the participants are going to take a lot from this, and I have shared your LinkedIn profile address with them. So hopefully they are going to have many more questions. We have almost five unanswered questions there, so that means people are inquisitive now. So
Please
uh,
write to me. Feel free to write to me. I will answer all your questions over a period of time. Please share your questions with me. I'll be very happy. And if you can share your phone number, then that'll be more easier. I can pick up the phone, call you, and answer your question. In short, and have a discussion with you. Uh, very happy to do that. As far as it changes our landscape and improves the overall strata that we currently stand on as warehouse service providers or as warehouse developers, I think it'll be great. I also invite you to please come and join the Warehouse Association of India so that we can form a force together to improve the industry that we already work for. Most
So
welcome.
this is another new knowledge. I today got to know there is Warehouse Association of India. So, if possible, if you can if you can share the link of that, or how does someone can join in the chat box, it will be great. So
Sure.
once again, thank you so much for this, and to the audience, I have shared all the information regarding the speakers in the chat box. If you want to connect with them, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for joining in on a Monday, on a weekday. That's really nice of you people to join and to listen to the speakers. That it gives us a good motivation for doing more and more fireside chats. On behalf of SCPC and the speakers, thank you very much, and keep following us on LinkedIn. We will soon come up with the next episode. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you, everyone.
most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Arif.
day,
Bye
all of
bye.
you. Stay safe.